You're listening to Where You Live with Gene and Tony.
Welcome back to Where You Live with Gene and Tony. We're broadcasting live from the Concierge Landscape Studios, and this hour is also brought to you by Extreme Exteriors. Tony, the number for folks to call if they'd like to be part of the show?
651-289-4488, or email us at gene@ncmgi.com.
Yeah. And our guest today is Todd Rooker, who is president of Alpha and Omega Financial Planning, the founder of Financial Crisis Recovery, and also author of the Financial Crisis Bible. Now, let's talk about that for a second. The Financial Crisis Bible. What is that, Todd?
Well, there's a tremendous amount of people out there who are struggling with what to do. And the options that are available often come to these folks by way of a CPA and an attorney, a financial advisor, a mortgage broker, real estate agent. And to put it all together is exceedingly challenging. So what happens typically is you'll go to see multiple people and come away more confused than when you started because everybody's got their own particular focus or tools within their toolbox. My business is about knowing about all of these things. And I think people are most stressed out when they don't know what to do. And so, their answer to that is, I'll make no decision because I'd rather do that than not make another bad decision, which of course is paralysis is of no good. So I find that people, when they have an understanding of all the different options that are out there, people are intelligent, but they have to have enough information with which to make a competent decision. The Financial Crisis Bible is to look at all of the options that avail themselves, the ins and outs, the implications of each one, and also the length of time it'll take to recover afterwards. And once you have that information, you can then begin to make competent decisions. So the Financial Crisis Bible is a tremendous tool to give a person perspective and begin to make these decisions. The idea that things are so bad it really doesn't matter anymore is nonsense. And this is a free download. So Financial Crisis Bible is a free download, and they can just simply go to www.financialcrisisbible.com, and they can download that information. And for the first time, they'll actually understand the options that are available and the implications of each.
Wow, what a fabulous tool.
Yeah, and we're going to put a link up on our website to your website and to that resource and some others that we're going to talk about here in our time here before the end of our second hour. I wanted to ask you from our last break, Todd, to give us an idea a little bit about the typical client that you deal with.
Sure.
But there was a gentleman, Dan, called. He didn't want to be on the air, but he left a message. He said, I have to know. He said, you told a story about your wife and your child. He said, did your wife live? Is your child okay? And he wanted to know why you didn't go the bankruptcy route.
Wow. Well, the first thing is that my beautiful wife survived, and if you call our office Julie, you'll hear her, and she's my baby, and I'm so thankful to have my wife, and I try to tell her that every day. My little boy is now 23 years old. He has cerebral palsy, and yet he was in a wheelchair when he was 11 years old, but you'd never know it because today he works at Byerly's in Maple Grove. He has fisted on the left side of his body from the CP, but he walks, talks, rides a bicycle, he drives a car, he bags groceries, and is a cashier at Byerly's in Maple Grove, and he actually power lifts. And today,
Wow.
my first son is an amazing athlete, is an 8-time All-American in college and track and field and a national champion, and yet his brother, who was born with cerebral palsy, is actually the warrior in the family because he, with cerebral palsy, can deadlift over 300 pounds and squats 400 pounds, if you can imagine that. That's my son with cerebral palsy. So, this family that I have, we are warriors. And I am so proud of my family. The bankruptcy route, to answer that question, it was never really an option to me. And, the part of the problem is that when I go on a show like this, I sound like the martyr and everybody feels sorry for me. But remember, I was working, 80 hours a week, going without sleep to try to pay all these bills back. And I legitimately did do that. But I wasn't the one who was at home. My dear sweet wife, who had undergone stage 3 cancer and was getting served by processed servers for 7 years. She went through more than I went through in this. But when you get so deep and you're so far into it and you've paid so much back and you've told everyone adamantly that you're not going to file bankruptcy, by goodness, it's a little bit late when you're $200,000 or $300,000 into a $500,000 bill to change your mind and turn another direction. And so I didn't, although I've got different perspective today, having gone through that.
Wow.
Interesting.
Yeah. And, it's the thing that came to my mind is whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And that certainly is the case with you and your family.
That's right.
Yeah. Wow. Well, let's turn a little bit now and talk about who is that typical client, because, Todd, I think there's probably a lot of people out there listening who probably are connecting with a number of things that you've been talking about here this morning. And what you deal with the typical client is kind of the same thing with each person, isn't it?
It is. First, the first thing to note is that the earlier that a person comes to me, the better. And so I have, over the years, I have conditioned people who are often my referral sources, attorneys, CPAs, financial advisors, real estate and mortgage brokers. And a lot of people are, I'm fortunate, know me and will refer business to me. And I've kind of said, look, what I'm looking for is people who haven't even missed a payment yet. So having said that, my typical client would be someone like this. They would often come to me and many times will tell me they've heard from two people who don't know each other that I'm the guy they need to see. But when they talk to me, they are not certain as to why. And so, they will say, here's my deal, Todd. Never missed a payment in my life. As a matter of fact, I still have not. However, I am exhausting all of my financial resources in an effort to do the so-called right thing and make my payments on time. I have taken loans from my retirement account. I've taken cash advances from credit cards. I've even gone as far as to borrow money from family and friends, all in an effort to pay the bills and do the right thing. And at this point, it seems as though all I've done is simply delay the inevitable, and I'm about out of rope. And so my questions are, Todd, do I simply let my real estate go into foreclosure? Do I need to consider short sale, deed in lieu, loan modification, credit counseling, God forbid, even bankruptcy? And then how do I rebuild my life when this entire nightmare is over? That's my world. I have to know about every one of those, all the implications, how they all work, and how you can put together a coordinated strategy that addresses all of these issues in a cohesive way. But the problem is that most people will say, I've only got 2 questions. That's all I have. People who say that to me, they have no idea, and it's hard to convince them that what you're asking has so many more broad and grand implications. You want simple answers to complicated questions. And it's just enough information to be dangerous when you ask a question and get a simple answer.
I was going to say, often it's that approach that got us in trouble in the first place. Like you pointed out, we go into the college financial aid office and say, how do we pay for college? I have a simple question. I want a simple answer. How do we pay for college? We don't look at the implications and what the consequences down the road are going to be. We're dealing with the problem today.
Well, yeah, that's it exactly. All we're asking is, how do we get the money we need now instead of how are we going to take care of it? And that's what you are getting people to try and concentrate on.
That's why it always comes down to money management. And when people are in this position, no one wants to hear it. And people who are intelligent, here's part of the problem when you bring up budget or money management. Intelligent people who often believe that any idiot, forgive me, with a calculator can do a budget. How tough could it be? And the challenge is that when you bring up that, they are utterly incensed by the notion that you're insinuating that they can't manage a budget, and they're offended by the very notion. Having said that, at my billable rate of $250 an hour, I did budgets in 2010 for 38 CPAs who told me they needed help managing their personal household budget. I have an infinite stream of certified financial planners, of which I teach continuing ed to, and they call me the financial planner's financial planner because I help them manage their own day-by-day money. And these are intelligent people. It's not to insinuate for a moment that they're not, but they're no better at managing money than anybody else.
Wow.
You know what's amazing? In our business, in managing homeowner associations, for the most part, every board member knows that they need to have and deal with a balanced budget, that you just can't say, well, we're going to increase the budget and buy and spend money on all of these things next year because people say, where's the money going to come from? They understand that. But that same homeowner doesn't understand how that applies in their own personal life and the amount of foreclosures that we're seeing and people who are unable to continue on is just astounding.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. I mean, at the end of the day, if it comes down to paying your mortgage or feeding your kids, it's going to take you a millisecond to figure out which one you're going to do. You go into survival mode, and believe me, you don't need any counsel on it. You'll know what to do.
Now, sometimes you talk about that people who are in financial trouble, they actually even spend more.
Well, absolutely. As a matter of fact, as I've already said, first off, a lot of people console themselves by the notion that they've not missed a payment yet. But the reality is they're in an upside down position, meaning a burn rate. So they're spending more than they're bringing in take home pay. And maybe they've got a resource like a savings account or they're taking loans from a retirement account, but they don't even know how much they are actually spending above and beyond. And so they don't calculate that and they're drifting towards the rocks. So the reality is if you've not missed a payment and your spend and your cost of living is more than what you're bringing in the form of take-home pay, it presupposes that you're subsidizing that. However, if somebody says I got $5,000 in my savings account and I'm upside down at the rate of $500 per month, okay, so there's 10 months. Now remember, the notion for a person who's in a financial crisis that they should create a budget or manage money doesn't even occur to them. But the reality is great. You do simple math, $500, you got $5,000 in savings. It means in 10 months you're going to run into the wall. However, that's not true because, in fact, statistically, do you think people spend more money or less money on discretionary spending when they feel as though they're spinning out of control financially?
You would think that they would spend less.
They spend more. They're depressed.
Oh,
they're bummed out about their money. They're running away. And in fact, they don't have 10 months. They crash into the rocks in a fraction of that time, and they're not ready for it. And they have no strategic plan as to what to do once they are there.
It fits with what you said about everything is so bad that I can't do anything to make it better, so I might as well just crash and burn.
Well, right. I mean, when you hear me explain my typical client, I mean, in a perfect world, short sale, bankruptcy, foreclosure, these things, these terms to a person, they have a tendency to just want to shut down because in a perfect world, they all stink. And the idea that I have to pick from one of these options that all stink, my best answer to that is I'll just stick my head in the sand and do nothing.
Now, we've got to take a break right now. When we come back, you talked about some of the different options that folks have: foreclosure, short sale, loan modification. We have time maybe just to try and just delve into just one or two of those a little bit to let people understand what it is that they're dealing with, how difficult is it, and they may not get out of their financial difficulty. That's here on Where You Live with Gene and Tony. We'll take a break. We'll be back after this.